Hi, my name is Dria Thornton, and I am a multi-platinum and Grammy-nominated songwriter and vocalist. I am the Houston Inspira Storyteller for your community. I have been in the music business for about 7 years, and I'm a songwriter, a vocalist, a background vocalist, as well as a producer. And my husband and I, our team, we are called the Front Runners, and we own our own label here in Houston, as well as write and produce for other artists. I have been featured on songs with Logic, Rick Ross, Meek Mill, Young Thug, Lecrae, and many other artists. I've had a huge successful record that spoke to suicide a few years ago called 1-800. I did the background vocals for that. I'm also a composer for TV and film licensing. Was recently featured on the show Bel Air. My music was featured on the show Bel Air on Peacock, as well as the Kardashians. And I work very closely with Serena Williams with music, creating custom music for her clothing line, as well as her Lincoln motor car campaigns. So I tell a lot of stories, but I am here to tell your story as the Houston Inspira artist. And I want to be able to create a 7-minute play that will highlight your stories, your community, and the effects of the pollution that's happening in your community, the cancer clusters, as well as the Union Pacific Superfund site. The play will highlight the effects of your health, the effects of the generational health, and I really would like to speak more on the children so that I can create more of a compassionate story for the public, for anyone that will be watching this play. I would like them to be able to understand that the children are innocent and they don't deserve what's happening to them. They don't have a voice, and I would like to be the voice for you as well as the voice for children, and hopefully create a more compassionate look at what's happening in your community. This play will be presented to the city of Houston for this fall for the public health campaign for 2023. I am looking forward to speaking with each and every one of you to hear your stories, to hear what's happening to you more in depth, and be able to create the story for the public to hear, and hopefully be the voice that is unheard. So thank you, and I look forward to meeting everyone.
All right. Well, let's get started. Thank you everyone that's in here, and it's okay if more people come in because tonight is really just more of having having dialogue, increasing conversations surrounding the environmental um, issues that residents are experiencing within Houston, especially residents in the Northeast part of Houston. And as some of you may know, my name is Devontae Caldwell. I'm with the Houston Planning and Development Department, and I am here with my colleague, Lindsay Williams. We have been working with our other planners in the Planning and Development Department as part of the Mayor's Complete Communities initiative. Each one of us has worked with specific communities. Me specifically with Kashmere Gardens, and Lindsay as well has been helping me with Kashmere Gardens, as she has also has experience in working with other complete communities like such as Acres Home and Sunnyside. And we are also here with our Houston Inspire Storyteller, Dria Thornton. As many of you have seen, as some of you have already have got some introductions through the video that was just played. But before we hand off to her, and she will talk about the project again, just kind of keep briefly talk about it again, as well as a brief background about herself. Lindsay will kind of go over how to utilize Teams and how to mute and unmute yourself and so forth. So, Lindsay.
Good evening, everyone. Thanks for joining us. For those unfamiliar with Teams, I'm just going to run through a few of the need to know kind of instructions. As a reminder, you have a toolbar. You can click the bubble icon to type in the chat. We'll be monitoring the chat tonight for anything that, any questions that you would like to ask if you don't want to verbally ask those. If you could put your name in the chat, or where you're representing from, that would be great as well. Please remember to mute if you're calling in. You can mute and unmute by pressing *6. And if you would like to speak, please utilize the raise your hand button in the toolbar mentioned earlier, and we will be sure to call on you. We look forward to a really great conversation around a difficult subject. And we are very excited for Kashmere to have such a monumental artist working in the community, Kashmere Trinity Garden 5th Ward, to really tell their story. So I am going to hop off. If anybody has any questions, feel free to put those in the chat or just raise your hand. Thanks.
And also, right before we hand it off, I do want to also acknowledge our for part of this program, we have a storyteller for each of the selected complete communities, like including Kashmere, and we have a partnering environmental organization, which is the Environmental Defense Fund. We have representatives in this meeting as of right now. If you would like to quickly introduce yourselves, and then we'll begin.
Hey everybody, I'm Stephanie Coates from Environmental Defense Fund. Thrilled to learn more about you, Dria, and this awesome background. Thank you for sharing that, and can't wait for the project.
Thank you, Stephanie.
I guess I'll go next. I'm Keith Downey, Super Neighborhood President for Kashmere Garden and founding director for Northeast Houston Redevelopment Council. Ms. Thornton, thank you. We have a lot of stories to tell. So just get ready. But everybody, hello and good to see you here.
Thank you.
Yeah, if you want to get started now, and then we'll open up to more people. And when you want to speak, yeah, feel free to state your name and if you're part of an organization and so forth. Thank you.
Thank you very much for having me. Again, my name is Dria Thornton. I appreciate everyone taking the time out tonight to speak or to join in on the call. Again, I am the Houston Inspira Storyteller for Kashmere Gardens. I'm honored to be a part of this fight with you and help bring justice to your community. One, because my family has history in 5th Ward, Kashmere, and Trinity Gardens. And secondly, because my background is in storytelling. So as a songwriter and an artist, that's very important because my ability to tell a story and bring it to life is what I do on a day-to-day basis. This project I proposed to the city was a 7-minute, 1-act play, which will include a custom song performed by myself. And this way there's a physical story and a musical story, and the play will highlight the community's voice and the voice of the children in the community. When I heard that the children in the community were experiencing 5 times more cases of leukemia versus the entire state, I realized that they needed an elevated voice as well. To me, children are innocent. They have no control over what they're exposed to. Children shouldn't have the responsibility of thinking about how something as simple as going to play outside is going to affect their health in the future. Children don't have as big of a voice as adults do. And even adults experiencing health issues right now may have initially been exposed as children. So that's very important to know and talk about. For me, it's important to make sure the story highlights children and how it affects them in this environmental crisis. The play and the music will be presented on November 12th within your community, and the location is still to be determined, but I definitely will keep you updated on that. At this time, I'd like to introduce my team, who's also going to play an intricate part in telling your story. I have Jesse Shelton with Lee Shelton Films. He will serve as the lead writer and director for The Playwright. He's a director, a playwright, and screenplay writer, a father, a husband, and a youth AAU football and track coach. He also has family in the Fifth Ward area and at Kashmere High School. I have Dria Thornton. She will serve as she's also on the call, serve as the production assistant and the acting coach. Dria has a background in childhood education as well as theater and theater production. She'll be assisting me with rehearsals as well as the technical aspect of the production. Lastly, also on the call, I have Christopher Thornton, who's serving as my project manager and co-producer of the music. He is my music production and songwriting partner. He has a background in technology, business development operations, music production, and a youth basketball coach. He's also a husband, my husband, and a father. So yeah, that's my team. I look forward to hearing everyone's voice this evening and going forward. I'd like to thank Devontae and Lindsay for all your help in coordinating this meeting and making the connection for us to speak. Also, thank you to the Environmental Defense Fund for being a partner and a resource for me, and I look forward to working with you in the future, especially Stephanie. Now, I'd like to open the floor to anyone who'd like to speak or share anything you want with us. Everyone will be allotted 5 minutes to introduce yourselves and how this environmental crisis has affected you or someone you love. Also, I want to let you know that after the meeting, there will be a link available for you to schedule a one-on-one virtual call with me and my team. The slots will start of being available starting tomorrow, August 24th through August 30th. And in the event I run out of any available times, I definitely want to add more. I want to hear as many people as possible. I'm definitely here to serve you and your community. And thank you for taking the time to listen to me. Back to you, Devontae or Lindsay.
Mr. Downey, I see you have your hand raised.
That is correct. Welcome, everybody. Welcome, production team. Welcome, Dria. I want to give you a little background, quick background on the cancer cluster that you hear in dealing with the creosote. So after many years, there was a cancer cluster study that was performed by the Texas State Health Department, asked for by Congresswoman Sheila Jackson Lee. And following that, I would say 9 months later, I was on a call because with doctors, with the state health department, you name it, people in the medical center, other healthcare professionals, because they wanted to determine whether there could be an epidemiology study with this cancer cluster. And it came out during that meeting that the children had never been studied. The adults had been studied, but not the children. And it was determined at that point, you can't go forward unless you're studying the health of our children that are suffering as well. And that being said, because we've lost quite a few, young adults to this, as well as, older adult, residents. And so actually you have 2 cancer clusters in Kashmere Garden. People get them confused and blend into one, but there was an initial one, and then there was a second one that dealt with childhood cancers, those affecting the youth and what have you. So I just wanted to give you a little background with that, because on Twitter, they get blended, you know what I mean? With everybody putting out information, but they don't disseminate that there's 2 different ones out there dealing with the same thing. And both had the same findings and what have you, some unusual cancers, of course, the usual leukemia, larynx, lung, what have you. But, dealing with that, I just wanted to give you a little background of that, what took place with that.
Thank you very much, Mr. Down.
And if I might also add, um, I'm on the board of Bayou City Initiative with Jim Blackburn at Rice University. And he proposed something to me about a year ago. He said, you know, dealing with floods, and he deals with flooding in Harris County and the counties, what have you. He said, what's going on with the cancer out there with the creosote? And I said, well, I see it's a lot of wheels spinning out there. It's been going on for years. People, the community is advocating, they're fighting. There's an organized group, Impact, of Sandra Edwards and Reverend Caldwell and all of that. He said, you know, we could possibly do something that's very unusual. He said, you can do an intent to sue. He said, very few organizations bring this forward because it takes time and it takes a lot of money. And if we can get possibly the county and the city to take the lead on this, and we be the third party in this lawsuit, you know, this is something we could get them. And he said, it's not monetary damages coming to people where they get money in their pocket, but it would force UP and TCEQ to clean that site up quicker because they're dragging their feet, you know. So that's the purpose for that intent to sue that's been announced, but I just wanted to let you know about that as well.
Thank you very much. I did want to ask you really quick, as far as TCEQ, I know there was like a cleanup initiative. Do you know where I could find that documentation?
I believe you can find it from Jim might have that, and offline I could send you on his email address.
Okay.
In fact, I might put it online here.
Okay, thank you very much.
Are there any other community responses?
And sometimes I notice this, but you know, we might have some more folks coming in around 6:30. So usually sometimes there's always like a 30-minute type of window for people to come in, especially, you know, people are transitioning into the evening. So we might get some more people coming in at 6:30. But thank you, Mr. Downey, for the insight that you have provided. Is there anything else that you would like to add? I mean, I understand this, you know, these issues has been ongoing for many years, and it seems like there has been some type of a rumble in recent years to really shake things up and to, you know, to really take action and about it. I mean, anything you would like to add to that, you know, in terms of, you know, what are things looking like? Is things leading up? What do you think?
Well, of course, you have organized community group Impact that they're fighting for equity, they're fighting for cleanup, they're fighting for buyouts. And they've been doing this for years, trying to get UP to, you know, make sure they're doing the right thing. But when you mention TCEQ, they are working really for the railroads themselves, the state agency. One thing they said in Oklahoma City at our Brownsville conference was to try to get your state agency involved, but the state agency actually works for corporate, you know, so that doesn't help us. So it's about putting pressure on, you shouldn't have to put pressure on your state agency to do what is right by a company in your community that's affecting your health. But that's where we are with that. So it's just continuing to push forward, you know, no matter what the obstacles are. because in our communities, we face not only dealing with creosote, we're also dealing with the fact everybody knows about Kashmere, where they're located in Fifth Ward. We're locked in by railroads, highways, concrete batch plants. That's why right now there are two different laws, well, actually three lawsuits, one about discrimination with the city. We know about that one, put that to the side. We're dealing with the lawsuit with concrete batch plants. There are 150 concrete batch plants in Harris County. 8 are in Northeast Houston. So what it's forced us to do is to get air monitors so that, residents can measure the quality of air that they breathe every day. So it's, multiple fronts. There's several things happening here, but all dealing with a better quality of life, as you say, for our children. One of the things I would point out, you mentioned Kashmere High, which I'm a graduate of. We have an arts department. It would be great to hear from the students to tap into that, to tap into what their opinions are, how they feel about their environment as well. So that might be key. And I'm going to put the principal's email, Mr. Dickerson. In fact, I will spell it out. I'll give it to you right here because I'm putting in Mr. Blackburn's. Is B. Dickers, all one word, Dickers, at HoustonISD.org. But it would be great to hear from the students and what they are saying also about the environment in which they live and get their perspective.
Absolutely. Definitely going to reach out and do that. And also, I wanted to invite the students out to be a part of the auditions and a part of the play if any of the students wanted to be involved.
They are a fine arts, high school, so that would be right up the alley.
Yeah, absolutely. I will reach out. Thank you.
Mm-hmm. And if you need to reach out to any other of we believe in the feeder pattern approach. So we have relationships with all of the principals, and there's 7 different principals, 5 elementary, a middle school, Key Middle School, and Kashmere High. So we have a relationship with all of those principals. So if you ever need to reach anybody, just let us know.
Okay, thank you very much.
Speaking of local auditions, so yeah, it's open to the community, and it could be, is there like a specific age range that you're looking for? It could be like, Mr. Downey just mentioned like high schoolers. What about, elementary school students or middle school students? Is it open to all of that?
Yes, it will be. We haven't actually written the playwright yet, just because we wanted to definitely include the community voice so that we can hear everything and then put together the story. But I know for sure there will be a elementary age child, possibly a junior high or high school child. But yes, there will be. We'll be reaching out. We'll need to reach out to all those age groups just in case. There will definitely be children in it. I just don't know how many and exactly what age they'll be. But yeah, this is a great resource for us once we do figure that part out. Also, Mr. Downey, I know you guys have a meeting tonight, so most of the community is probably over at that meeting. If there's anybody else that you feel like needs to speak with me or the team and tell their story, I will have a link that people can sign up and set those appointments.
And we have, now this is, the meeting tonight is for Trinity Garden, which all these super neighborhoods have different meetings, what have you. And we're all for the month of August, so we didn't have a meeting. Our next meeting is September 13th. That should be the second Tuesday in September, which is our standard meeting, and because of everything going on, COVID, we're virtual. But we would invite you to that meeting as well.
Okay.
And on that meeting, just to give you a heads up, you do have elected officials at times, you have department heads, residents, of course, and you have different nonprofit organizations.
Okay.
And it's more of an informational type of monthly meeting. Planning is there as well as others. So it's a good way to, it's a network, actually a good networking meeting. When I started listing people there. But that would be great also to attend because you start to get the feel of what everybody is. And plus you're putting it in their psyche of what you're doing. And I could bring you to the table to introduce you to everyone.
Okay, absolutely. I'll be there.
And then as well, I noticed that also Fifth Ward is also a part of the my list of contacts that, you know, the list of stakeholders that I've been engaged with throughout the Complete Communities process, and one leader reached out to me and she's not available, but the Fifth Ward Super Neighborhood, they meet every first Wednesday of the month. So I can connect you with the president of the Fifth Ward Super Neighborhood. Her name is Joetta Stevenson, and then as well as I believe the vice president is Yoletta. Her name is Yoletta McCullough, and so yeah, I can connect you with them and see if you can also speak with that organization.
Okay, thank you very much. I'm seeing these chats. Okay, emails coming through. Thank you.
Yeah, that would be good too. And sorry, I got that information in there. Yeah, that would be good to reach out to Joetta Stevenson as well in Fifth Ward. Because actually that site is not, that Creosote site is really not in Kashmere Garden, it's in Fifth Ward. But it's really what they love to call Liberty Gardens because it's off of Liberty Road. But very few people say that. They would just say, you know, Fifth Ward, which technically it is. So that would be great. Because Ms. Stevenson is also a part of Impact, working with Sandra Edwards, and who you see on TV all the time and what have you. So that would be great.
Yes. I saw some interviews with her, and I would love to speak with her as well.
Mm-hmm. And they can give you the real 411 on what's happening at Ground Zero.
Yes.
Mm-hmm.
Exactly.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
So not only, like I said, we're dealing with the railroads. And let me tell you what they do. They've secretly done this, UP. They will start one railroad track. And I know an instance right there off of Lockwood going from Kashmere to Trinity Garden where it's now 12 railroad tracks. And to my understanding from the trustee, who is Miss Kathy Bluford Daniels in Fifth Ward, that track that runs along out of that Inglewood Yard along Fifth Ward there toward downtown is one track, but they're trying to put in another track to make it a double track. Irregardless to the community. And it goes right through, Dogan Elementary right there off of Brawls and Liberty Road, the elementary school that's been there all those years. And then you have, not the Mickey Leland Academy at Fifth Ward, which is about 2 blocks away. They don't think about the health of the community nor the children.
Clearly not. Instead of
fixing the issue. They're adding more to the issue.
Yes, correct.
Okay. Okay.
And I'm sure, like Devontae said, you can get the Miss Stevenson's contact information from him.
Okay.
Oh, Devontae, and I know we're on this call here about one subject matter, but I just wanted to let you know Mrs. Carol Galloway had a stroke.
Oh no.
Over the weekend, word got to me, and I verified the truth because I have to verify everything now. But it is true. She had a mild stroke. And so all the communication I'm going through Rhonda Skilling Jones, who's actually going through her daughter to, to get information to her and what have you. But I heard it was mild, but I want to let you know.
Oh, I'm so sorry to hear that. I just saw Miss Galloway last week at one of the workshops for the Lily Pad Resilience Project at the Kashmere Multi-Service Center. I'm so sorry to hear that. She'll be my prayers.
Thank you.
Yeah, sorry to hear about that. I don't really know who she is, but I'm sorry to hear about
She's a resident of Kashmere Garden. She's in her 80s, and she has been a city council member as well as a school board trustee. So she's like the grandmother of advocacy in Houston, and she's on the NAACP as an officer.
Oh. Okay.
She's a very active
So it's
member.
taken a lot of. Go ahead, Devontae. What you gonna say?
I was just adding on, like she's been a very active member for many years. She was a former council member for District B. So she's been a great community leader.
And she was instrumental 21 years ago to help get Super Neighborhood started under Mayor Lee Brown.
Oh, wow.
And in Kashmere Garden, it was 21 of them, but Miss Galloway says Kashmere Garden was the first super neighborhood.
Wow.
So, Dria, you just to let you know, since we're coming up on this 5 years of Harvey, and of course, people are reaching out, tell your story, the media and what have you. Devontae and Lindsay, you got to give them credit and give the department credit. They've been one department, I'm not saying they're the only department, but they've been very instrumental in helping and working with us through the years, the last several years since Harvey, to try to get some things going in the community. And, some things have come to, we've had some growth, definitely had some growth, and continue to have growth, but it's also working with them, the advocacy, making sure we're trying to bring, components to help the community, to help improve the quality of life, as well as fighting for justice.
Yeah.
And so Congresswoman Sheila Jackson Lee, before I left town last week, she had a press conference last Sunday before that. And so that was part of that $60 billion Biden package coming out, but she would like to open a, what did she call it? An environmental justice center. And of course, you need more than one in Houston.
Yes.
Everyone can't pack into one building in life, but she was saying environmental justice center, where this center would be a place where these kind of issues, when they come forward, dealing with air, water, soil, and what have you, some company coming through and trying to, pollute more of the environment, where they can, you can have maybe lawyers there, people can bring their complaints to them. And basically, it's a place that would address a lot of these ills that we have in the community, such as not only legal dumping, but, emissions, the whole bit.
Yeah.
Health.
Yeah, I saw that Sandra Edwards was pushing to have a cancer clinic in the community at some point as well.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, she has mentioned that several times.
Yeah. Do you think that the community is towards the end of their fight?
Mm-mm.
No.
No way, Jose. No, because UP makes billions yearly. So, deeper the pockets, the longer the fight. And
Yeah.
that's why it was important to get the county and the city involved with this intent to sue, which what the meaning of that is, when you do an intent to sue, you have 90-day notice that I'm about to sue you. And it puts them on notice. And so the suit hasn't been filed yet, but they've been notified that they have 90 days to respond, and hopefully positively, to say, do you have a plan? Now, UP has a plan, putting slurry walls, encapsulating the area. But understand what has happened. They never cleaned up the site. They capped the site. So that's like putting a loose jaw on top of something, because every time it rains or a flood or Harvey comes along, you see sheens of water running along the curb. Rainbow sheens on the site when it's heavy rains like we're supposed to have this week. So that's what people are dealing with. Eventually, a lot of that becomes airborne contaminants, PM2s and what have you. Now we have disclosed that not only is it the creosote there, it was now mixed with hazardous waste. And so Jim might be able to give a lot to that. But I was speaking with the EPA director, who's from TSU, Dr. Nance, last week. And she said, yeah, we fought for that information to come out because people need to know what's really going on.
Yeah.
And some people did not want that information out, that was on the site as well, that it was hazardous waste, which is terrible, dioxins and others. Because what I understand, when they were starting to add up and do the data and the matrix on the types of cancer, it was adding up and it wasn't adding up. It was telling you that it was more there than meets the eye, than just creosote.
Right.
So now that we know that it was hazardous waste, and if you look it up, just look up the terminology about the site and the hazardous waste, it'll tell you where it is. I think it came from 2 or 3 different locations, 2 or 3 companies, industrial companies in Houston, that give you a little background. So, all of this is now being disclosed, and UP, their position continues to be, well, 2 things. It was Southern Pacific. We bought the company. And number 2, we didn't do it.
But
even if we didn't buy the company, we didn't do it. Prove that we did it.
Yeah.
And at the same time, people are dying.
Right.
So, yeah. So it's a Flint, Michigan in another way.
Right. Right. Has there ever been any testing underneath any of these homes?
I think it's going on right now. I think testing on properties, because they want to know basically how far this hazardous waste goes.
Right.
The soils, yes, the soils have been tested for creosote and the what I want to say, the plume that has traveled slowly on the earth, under the earth, rather, I should say, under what you can see for several dozen feet. But the fact of the matter is, yes, they're saying that quite a bit of the soil around there is contaminated, but does it have the hazardous waste included there? I think that they're testing for that now.
Okay. Okay.
And so there's a mistrust right now between the community and the state agency TCEQ, because TCEQ is basically working for the railroads.
Right.
And so when EPA in February, when Administrator Regan came down to Houston, he walked the area, saw the site, talked to the residents, talked to city officials, and said that, you know, something has to be done sooner than later. And I will make it my task to make sure that this gets the necessary attention that it needs. The funny thing was, in Oklahoma City, he spoke to the 2,500 in attendance, and we were sitting off in a certain area, and he gave his hands up to us with a thumbs up as he left the stage. So that tells you it resonated with him that he was in Houston. It wasn't just, I go all over the country. So it's clearly on the radar nationally.
Right. That's good to have the biggest voice possible. Attention.
And because we're like on the environmental topic, actually, Mr. Downey, I think this would be could be the good time to kind of like talk about maybe what are some of the highlights that you got from the conference that you went with last week. And
Sure.
What was the name of the conference once more?
Brown Fields, with the S on the fields, 2022. So it was a conference from people from all over, really the world, but all over the country, to talk about what is a Brownsfield. Brownsfield is everywhere, actually. It's basically when you take sites and developers repurpose those sites. You build on top of those sites. I'll use an example of what a Brownsfield example is. Below Fifth Ward on Gregg Street, with all of those $300,000 townhouses, all that used to be industry back in the day. But it's been repurposed now, and developers have developed that land. And you can also not only develop it in a bad way, you can develop it in a good way. You can have parks. But it's taking what has already been developed and repurposing or redeveloping that land. Doing what you have to do. You can take an old gas station or whatever. In some cases, that's been done around the country. And where used to be where a site was maybe a Brownsfield, what have you, back in the day. And you can reuse that land to try, because land is at a premium right now. There's not a lot of open land untouched in America. And a lot of municipalities, they repurpose their land. Somebody buys the property, builds on that property, what have you. So you can just, take that land and reuse it. But the point is that in this conference, they were talking about how the many aspects of a lot of funding out there. There is a lot of funding for Brownsfield, federal funding. Quite a bit. And so they're talking about how communities can acquire this funding to try to develop their communities in areas that, may have been an abandoned factory, rusty old factory sitting in the weeds and whatever, but you can acquire enough, a developer and enough funding where you can tear that down and maybe build a park. Maybe build the homes or what have you. So it was a lot of that, because that's all over the country. It's not just happening maybe in Houston or something like that. But with this creosote site, the first thing is to first of all, clear it out, clean it out as much as possible. And the slurry walls, come to find out that UP is proposing with TCEQ, my understanding, they would possibly collapse over time. So the proposal that they're proposing may not stand up over time structurally. because the EPA director, Dr. Nance, was explaining to me that there could be a collapse at some point of what they're proposing. So it's not solid. But in the meantime, people are dying. And a lot of times, this is true, the problems outlive the people. How many people have died since Hurricane Harvey waiting to get their homes rebuilt or repaired? How many people have died waiting for this creosote site to be cleaned out or cleared out? And they die from stress, it's related, not unrelated, related illnesses that are undefined. Mental health, respiratory illnesses, other illnesses that it can lead to. So this is compact. It's a compact problem.
I see someone has their hand raised. Chris Thornton.
Yeah. Hi. I had some quick questions. And to the whole group, I was wondering how much consistent media attention has been brought to this?
Good question.
Because the consistency is the delineating factor, right? There's a lot of things that happen that media attention is focused on, and then it goes away. But how much consistent?
This has been rare. This has been fairly consistent lately. When I say lately, I'm speaking about the last 6 years. Because as you can see, and as I'm telling the story here, they're peeling back a layer, and then another layer, and then another layer. So it's nothing all at once, but it keeps it in the news. Which you want to keep it in the news, just as you're saying, Christopher. Things tend to go away, become a sound bite, becomes interest for this month, and next month is another issue. But Miss Kathy Bluford Daniels, who is the trustee, she helped bring this to light about, she keeps saying 12 years ago, but it was not longer than that because it can't stay 12 years. So I would say 13 to 14 years ago, it was brought to her attention that, we used to play, because I was born in Fifth Ward and grew up there. And we used to play, I was right 1 block from the railroad track. And part of the story I don't tell, but I was there. And so we used to, we lived there. You hear the train, you see the smoke, you do that, but you never thought about how it affected your health. And so I would say 14 years ago, Miss Daniels, who lives even closer and further down toward the Inglewood Yard where she grew up, she took samples. She brought it to the attention of officials. And that was 12 years ago. They paid attention, but going what Christopher is saying, it kind of died on the vine. But it didn't absolutely die.
So question also along with that question, how much of that was national intention in comparison to regional?
It was regional. It was local, and I believe it was regional, but I don't believe it was national.
Yeah, and this is one of those things that, when we take a look at the state of, any of the major subjects, we keep talking about global warming and the effects of global warming, like you said, the rain that we have here actually makes this bubble up more, because like you said, that wall you were talking about, that retaining wall for the plumes, if it's made out of cement, yes, it will degrade over time. Absolutely. And the more rain we have, the more the breakdown of those cement plumes and stuff, whatever they used, if they're not metal lined, it'll break down over time. So I'm just saying that to say that there's been a lot of huge environmental things that the national attention was the thing that broke it wide open, so.
Right. Correct. And let me give you a little context here too, Dria and Christopher and others. So there was a meeting at Wheatley High School about 3 years ago. Congresswoman Sheila Jackson Lee called the meeting. You had elected officials. You had Ms. Blueford Daniels, Boris Miles, the whole bit. You also had an auditorium of over 1,000 residents. I had never seen 1,000 residents in an auditorium before. And Erin Brockovic, that's why they showed up, was there because, of course, of celebrity status and all, but they were there for another reason as well. She asked a question. How many people in the room have either had someone die of cancer or suffering from cancer? Every hand in the room went up. That was a sight to behold. That shows you how bad the problem is. Now, here's the reality part of that. A lot of people are they look to get money. To be honest with you, you know how it is. And they think maybe a payday is involved in whatever. But it's more about, yes, the people that are living there now and cleaning up that site. And so that's why BCI, Jim Blackburn at Bayou City Initiative this is not about getting paid. This is about cleanup. Yes, money might be involved to relocate you or build a health center or what have you. But this is mainly cleaning up for future generations, yourself and future generations, because that should have been done 12 years ago when it was brought to everyone's initial surface, brought to the surface for everyone. But yeah, but yes, there might be a payday involved, and yes, lawyers have come aboard, and you see them on Twitter, and you see this and that. But the main thing is to get that site cleaned up to the best of ability. Will you totally clean it up? No. The plume supposedly is traveling in a northerly direction slowly. We don't know the speed, but it is. They say it does travel slowly through dirt, earth, toward Kashmere Gardens community itself. Now, the closest school that you have there to the site is Fleming Middle School, which is blocks away. So just keep that in mind. And there's been a recent test for the pipes at Fleming for lead. And it is, now let me put it like this, the pipe should be changed quickly, soon. Yeah, they're dealing with lead in their pipes at higher levels than other schools that have been tested in the area, to my understanding.
Do you know what year this school was built?
I can't remember when Fleming, because Fleming was there, from my memory. I can't remember the year that it was built, but yeah, but Fleming is there. You also have another school there, Isaac Elementary, that is a couple of blocks. That's off of Lockwood. It's off Pickfair actually, but the back end of it is Lockwood Drive. And it's right before Crane Street. So it's between Collinsworth and Crane. Yep, that's exactly, yeah, between Collinsworth and Crane toward Lockwood. It's like when Lockwood starts to curve, there's a school off to your left-hand side if you're traveling north. And you see, go ahead.
No.
Tell me.
Oh, I was asking, is that's towards Trinity Gardens?
No, well, you're going into Kashmere Garden at that point. Oh, Kashmere's true boundary is, and it's not even Kelly Street. People think it's the highway. People think Kashmere doesn't go past 610 or it doesn't go past Kelly. It actually goes where that bridge is going into Trinity Garden, that high bridge on Lockwood where you crossed all those tracks.
Yeah.
Okay, that used to be one track. That's what I was saying at first. That used to be one track. Now, when you're driving slowly and no cars behind you, you can now count 12 tracks. Okay. So that's your northern boundary for Kashmere and your southern boundary for Trinity Garden. That's the northern side of Kashmere Garden. The southern side stops at Collinsworth. So where Fleming is on the southern side of Collinsworth, that's actually 5th Ward.
Okay. Okay, yes, let's see.
Mm-hmm.
5, 6, 7, 2.
And to the western side boundary for Kashmere is 59. It's a little beyond 59 to the west, a couple of blocks or whatever, but that's industrial. No one lives there anyway. Too much. But that's where that's the western boundary is 59. To the eastern side is kind of interesting. It kind of comes into a triangle.
Mm-hmm.
And that triangle comes into Southern Pacific Railroad and 610. Where 610 starts to go toward Pleasantville.
Okay.
Or City Gas.
Wow.
Now, close to the Creosote site in 5th Ward at Liberty Gardens to your west along Liberty Road is Frenchtown. Now, are you familiar with Frenchtown?
No, I'm not.
Okay. There's a marker there off of Collinsworth. You might want to see Collinsworth in 59. There's a historical marker there. Frenchtown was created by Creole people, came into 5th Ward that lived in a cluster back in the day.
Okay.
Many of the people worked for the railroad, and that's another piece of the history piece too. They worked for the railroad, and a lot of those houses in Frenchtown were built by the wood from boxcars, and you can still see the wood on their houses now. The railroad played a key part in all of this history of these communities. And those streets are very narrow. You can always tell when you're in Frenchtown, 2 cars can't come down the street together. One has to pull to the side and let the other one come down. Plus, it's at the surface. They have very little yards, front yards, so it floods very, very badly through there during heavy rains.
Yeah, I was going to ask that. I was wondering that actually, if any wood treated with creosote was used to build those homes.
Well, I wouldn't say it was treated with creosote necessarily for the boxcars, but the old way, the wooden boxcars that they had instead of before the metal ones. Hey, Don. Hey, Miss Flanagan, how you doing?
We did have one resident that came to Reverend Caldwell's office. Hey, I'm Daniela Flanagan with the Coalition of Community Organizations. And Reverend Caldwell is one of the folks that helped found Impact 5th Ward that works with Sandra Edwards and the president, Lisa Glenn. And we have a resident gentleman that came in, and his father took some of the old treated railroad ties and actually constructed a home. And everybody in the home died except for him. And I think Reverend Caldwell can find that gentleman for you if that's something you needed to do, to talk with him directly. We also had a resident whose family used to take water from the yards, and contaminated water, obviously, and they watered their garden. So for years, decades, all these flourishing collard greens, mustard greens, you name it, whatever's in there was being fertilized, grown with this contaminated water. So that's definitely, some stories that kind of get lost in the mix of us focusing so much on the intent to sue, but they're really tied to actual people and their true stories of how they live their lives. And I'm a student at HGC and mentioned, I'm from 5th Ward, and the lady's like, oh, my grandmother lived there in 5th Ward. And I was like, oh, that's great. Kind of chit-chatting, and all of a sudden through the conversation, she mentions her grandmother died of cancer. But she lives all the way on the southwest side now because their family moved out of 5th Ward. But there's connections all over the city and in very unique ways back to 5th Ward. And so the reach is massive. The 1,000 people that were in that auditorium is just not even fully reflective of how massive this reach is of people who were impacted by the cancer and the creosote. Let alone, this is just one railroad community. We have family members that lived in City Gas, also on the railroad, who also had lawsuits that started years ago that have been lost. We have a Hispanic group in Denver Harbor who had, I think, 5 families that acknowledged that they had cancer, impacted by cancer as well. Their attorney had a heart attack and died, and all their cases have been lost. There's so many unique stories of tragedy and resiliency inside of this cancer cluster that's very impactful. And we always have to mention too, it's not just one cancer cluster, it's a leukemia cluster found in children as well. So there's, like you mentioned earlier when you were talking, how important this is to tie this back to maternal and infant and child health. You know, to see a 13-year-old die of leukemia is unheard of. You know, that's very, so we need to kind of also make sure that we acknowledge not just our senior citizens or our super seniors who lived through this tragedy, but their great grands and their grands who are still now carrying this toxin around with them and going to these schools like Isaac and Fleming and Dogan and Kashmere Elementary, and you name it. And our schools aren't even the worst. There's some schools on the southwest side actually have worse lead than we do. But to see a community compacted with lead, dioxins, PFAs, PHAs, VOCs, you name it, that's a concern. That's a sacrifice zone, and that is environmental apartheid. Over.
Definitely.
Thank you, Daniela.
And the other piece I would add is we were saying before, a lot of these people that live, you live close to your job, just like people do now. And a lot of people worked in those at the railroad yard. Worked at the railroad yard that lived in the area, and so they were taking that home to their families. But she's exactly right. We have another railroad yard right there off of Kirkpatrick, which separates Houston Gardens from City Gas. Been there for decades.
We have 2 hands raised. Deshay?
So I just wanted to ask, it was mentioned that flooding is really significant in some of these neighborhoods. And since the plume is traveling through the ground, does the flooding exacerbate that and make it move faster through those communities or towards those communities?
I wouldn't say that it makes it travel any faster. What it does is brings things to the surface and they become airborne contaminants. And you're going to have some airborne contaminants anyway, because, you know, you're industrial capital of the world, for this country, for the world, rather. But, you know, the other thing is, yeah, these things become airborne contaminants, just like Daniela was pointing out. They travel all through, and you breathe it, and these particles, of course, you don't see. So you're coming down with diseases down the line as you get older that you don't know how you became ill. I had a cousin who never smoked, never drank, did that Christmas cooking sherry type deal, and she ended up with cancer and leukemia, and she lived very close to the site. But it was like, we could never figure out, how did she get cancer? And the lady ate the vegetable thing and the not too many sweets and the whole bit. It didn't matter. But definitely Daniela, Rem Caldwell, Sandra, they really have a pulse on really, you know, these individuals in the community and what they're going through, because they run into them and talk to them.
Chris, you had a question?
More of a statement. You know, I've been, you know, with my wife on this journey and stuff, and I just want to say, you know, we're committed to using all of our substantial resources to help with this any way that we possibly can. I speak for my whole family. And me and Dria, after this call, are gonna do some brainstorming to see how we can help kick this into more of overdrive. We've been very fortunate and blessed, and I was wondering why my wife was crying, and now I see why. You know, we've been blessed with to know a lot of people, and we want to help.
That sounds great.
And we're gonna.
No, we welcome that. Truly welcome that. And please, as much attention as can be brought to this, as you said, Christopher, keep the story alive. Don't let it be a soundbite. Don't let it be just for the now, because there's a tomorrow too for everyone.
Yeah, and
especially victims.
Yeah, and I think the key thing is what I keep hearing, the narrative is that there's been a lot of people that have, of course, had a lot of stories, and they had their lawyers, and so slowly each one of these, for their own particular reasons, might die on the vine. And that's why, in my personal opinion, the more we can collect all that information, especially with this play, and represent it in a clear, concise way, like you said a second ago, sir, when you were in that auditorium and 1,000 people raised their hands. The more moments we can make like that on the and get it seen on the national stage, that will get things moving. And granted, all help isn't good help, but at least if we put this in front of enough people, like you said, maybe there's something that could get fast tracked. Maybe it ends up in front of the right person.
Right. And I'm glad Daniela cleared up, because what's a statement I had made about people getting paid the auditorium, the whole bit. She's right. Many places I go around Harris County, they either have a Fifth Ward connection or a Kashmere Garden connection. And, people move out, they move to Sugarland, the Woodlands, Pearland, whatever land. And fact is that you run across someone in Humble that went to Kashmere High, their mother went to Kashmere, something like that nature. That's natural. But it's important to keep that, keep these stories going, keep them alive, and try to bring resolution to the problem. Some fellows at Project Row House about a month ago had me to come out to Third Ward, and they asked me, they say, how can we tell the history that's lost? Because I tell people all the time, we've lost so much Black history in Houston. It's just been, of course, they're trying to revise history, but we've lost so much that used to be there. They wanted me to explain to them the highway system in Houston. How did it come to be? And when did highways start? When did they complete? So I kind of know that because I'm a map guy. But they said, well, how can we tell the story? I said, find a wall and start painting. Just find a wall and start telling these stories. And so because they will pass by, children will pass by, look at these walls and say, wow, this, and that. And of course, it also tells them where they came from. Will give them pride and what have you. Now, I'm not saying that with you all. I'm just saying that, so much has been lost, and it's important. What you're doing, you're telling the story. You're telling the history that will not be lost 100 years from now. So it's important for future generations to know what happened when you were here. What happened when I was here? And I appreciate you all for doing this and taking on this project, because these people, such as myself, I'm an advocate, community leader, but I say people like that, people like us, all of us, because we all want a community. We feel like it falls on deaf ears. You bring it to a person's attention or an elected official's attention, and you don't necessarily get resolution. Let's be honest, to the problem. And it's a problem yearly, 1 year to the next year, to the next year, to the next year. And look at where this started with the cancer cluster 14 years ago, and look at what the conversation we're having tonight. But now that we're starting to get data, it's no longer theory. A lot of people have been dealing with theory for years. We have matrix, we have data, we have people like Daniela, but, people bringing it to the forefront of saying, hey, the buck stops here. This is what's going on. And you're able to slam that on the podium and say, look at my numbers. Look at the information. Pay attention to what I'm saying. Because go ahead, Daniel.
Mr. Donnie was saying, like, that's just triggered my thought, is like, if this had been Katy or Cypress or Woodlands or any place else, it would have been, hey, my nephew, say hi.
Hey.
My nephew Joey. If it had been in his neighborhood, it would have been one of those situations where it wouldn't have taken 14 years. Like, this is ridiculous. If it was the Woodlands complaining right now about how they don't want the I-45 in their neighborhood, they just have to make one single complaint about I-45. The rest of us are out here protesting downtown in the rain, sleet, and snow, telling them we don't want I-45, cutting up a historic church and schools and everything like it did before with I-10 and I-59 and 610, cutting up these neighborhoods years ago, 50 years ago. So the inequity, again, that's apartheid in the way that we're treated, in the injustice of the environmental issues that are facing our community.
Correct.
Yeah, I noticed that too in one of the news stories. I believe it was Sandra Edwards was speaking about. Oh no, it was a press conference a few weeks ago. She was speaking about the taxes and the value of their homes and their land. And like saying, you know, if it was the Woodlands, I mean, it would be a massive emergency because of the value of the homes and the value of that, the location and everything that comes with that community. But, you know, it's tough. You can't even build new properties here to raise the value, because essentially putting those properties there is not going to change the environmental issue that happens. So it's at the, you know, it's at people's death to move into that community or even, you know, build new properties there without fixing the issue.
Sandra is good for sound bites. I will always remember her for the rest of my life for sound bites, because she made a statement, another statement. Let's switch places between a person living in River Oaks and a person living on Liberty Road just for one day. Let's switch places. Would you be willing to do that? But I have to. But I live where I live for a lifetime. Yeah. But anyway, I've got to run to another meeting, so please forgive me.
No, thank you. We appreciate your time.
Thank you, Mr. Downey, very
Okay.
much.
Thank you. Thank you. And y'all have a good evening, okay?
You do the same.
Thank
All right. Thank you. And reach
Bye-bye.
out anytime you want.
Absolutely.
Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.
And thank you as well, Daniela, for, you know, thank you for your insight. Much appreciated. Thank you for joining. I guess, great conversation, and, this could be much more of, hearing more stories, and, you have heard from, some more leaders that you can reach out to following this meeting. So, overall, I really look forward to what this play will come out to be, and, to see like how all of these stories, will help really shape this play, because at the end of the day, the community as a whole is, they are, how I should say, they are they all taken part in the creation, right?
Absolutely.
So.
Absolutely. Thank you, Daniel. Well, thank you very much. And let me see if you could forward, pass the message on that, we would love to speak with anyone that wants to have a one-on-one conversation. Before we have an opportunity to hop on the September 13th call, I definitely would like to have as many people by word of mouth or email sign up to do these one-on-one conversations with me and my team, so that we can get, a better understanding of what's going on. Let me paste that.
Absolutely.
So yes, just to get a little bit more of understanding of what to look forward to. So what will be happening next in the timeline? If you could explain that, Dria. So then over the next couple of weeks, you'll do some one-on-one conversations and with community stakeholders and civic leaders and so forth. And then after that, then what happens next?
Then we'll be creating the story the play, creating the story for that, and then that we look to have that done in like 3 weeks, looks like 2 to 3 weeks after we speak with everyone, and then in October holding community auditions. So we're going to be ramping up just marketing or letting the community know, and I'm going to be reaching out to the people that Mr. Downey mentioned today, getting involved with the schools and just, you know, making sure people get to come out and help tell the story as a community and as creatives as well. So those are the two next things, is just having the one-on-one conversations and then the community auditions.
Sounds great.
Yeah.
So again, thank you everyone. Again, thank you, Christopher, Stephanie, Deshay, Daniela. Thank you everyone, and we'll keep in touch throughout this process. And yes, and again, I look forward to what would be at the end of this process.
Thank you very much. Danielle, I put the link in there if you would like to share that with anyone. Looks like she's frozen.
Fantastic. Thank you.
Okay, great. Thank you, everyone. Thank you, Lindsay.
Have a good evening.
Hey, Stephanie, Shay.
Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Bye, y'all.
Bye.